Don't be an educated idiot. It's a person who's smart but does nothing about it. You know all the things that you're supposed to do, but you don't do what's required. If knowledge is power, then learning is superpower. Grit always beats talent. Always. Well, hello, and welcome to the newest FitTalks. My name is Bill Pienias, and I'm very excited to talk about a subject that literally has been in the back of my mind since I was a little boy from my grandfather. We're calling this segment, Don't Be an Educated Idiot. My grandfather used to say that all the time. And my grandfather was a plumber and wasn't well schooled, but he was a good plumber, professional, and became ultimately a plumbing inspector. But he used to say it all the time, don't be an educated idiot. And when I got a little bit older, I said, Pops, what is an educated idiot? And he said, it's a person who's smart but does nothing about it. And he used to say that over and over and over again. I never really understood what that meant until I actually graduated college, got into the work world, was coaching, and then ultimately got into the business world. I found out that there was lots of people, very smart people, that pontificate about certain things and they know everything, but they do nothing. And I realized that was what my grandfather was talking about, being an educated idiot. You know all the things that you're supposed to do, but you don't do what's required to be successful. So tonight and today, that's what we're going to talk about, is being a person of purpose and living on action with intention. So a couple quotes that we need to consider. Jim Quick has said, if knowledge is power, then learning is superpower. And that's important because you need to know things. You just need to know good information, have the right information so you can make good decisions. But Tim Grover said something that's equally as important. He said, mental toughness is doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it, but you do it anyway. And if you can combine knowledge with mental toughness, learning with mental toughness, it can lead to biggest successes. See, there's a direct correlation between mental toughness and education and learning, because many times when you know certain things and you know they're going to be hard, you don't have the strength, the mental strength to say, I'm going to do it anyway. And I've known this in many things. Today, we're going to talk about these points. The first one is, there's a direct correlation between mental toughness and knowledge. The second, we're going to give you the data and the studies behind it so that it's not just opinion, though I will say your life experiences will probably have pointed in this direction that action always is greater than just knowing things. And then we're going to talk about personal and professional growth. And all of it's going to be around this common theme. And it's one of the common themes that I live my life on, is when you change, everything around you changes. And when you get better, everything around you gets better. So that's going to be the premise of Don't Be an Educated Idiot. So let's talk about the first segment that I think is important to dive into. It's called mental toughness. And let me give you a definition. Let me read it. Mental toughness is the ability to withstand adversity, maintain focus, and persevere through the challenge. Every one of us, by the way, is going to have challenges in life. We're going to have challenges in business, challenges in our personal life, challenges in relationships, challenges with our finance, challenges with our boss. There's going to be challenges all over the place. Even in terms of your car, you're going to have some challenges of how your car's not going to work on the day that you need it to work. All people have challenges. But it's really important to understand that mental toughness is going through and persevering through the challenges which are critical. Now, let me give you a personal example of perseverance and fighting through challenges. When we started our company, FinFit Life, it was brand new, 2020, had a great business plan, great strategy, and all of a sudden, COVID hit it. And everything that we had planned was out the window. Everything had changed. And they said in the insurance and investment business, man, it was the best time because if you weren't thinking about your mortality, your life, something was wrong with you. But that's great when you have an established business. It's not great when you have a brand new business and you have to meet new people and you have to start building new networks. I find out COVID's happening. It's my 50th birthday. We have plans. My wife and I have plans to do traveling. We have big plans for our business. We have big plans for our family. Everything stops. We become empty nesters. Our kids go away. Guess what? Now all our kids are back home. So all of the things that we had planned in life, all the things that we had planned in business, all forever changed. And I'm not going to lie. There's been many nights when I had sleepless nights thinking, did I make the right decision to start my own enterprise and to literally go into a business that's a brand new business, and all of a sudden all the cards are stacked against us? I had a lot of nights, sleepless nights, thinking, is this going to work? But I had two main thoughts that went through my head. Every part of my life before had prepared me for this moment, which means I had to go back to all of the hard challenges that I overcame and all the challenges that I faced in life, and remembered this real simple thing that I learned from a mentor of mine named Tim Stonehocker. Life is never as bad as you think it is, and it's also never as good as you think it is. Life is what it is, and how you take it is how you make it. And I will tell you, there was a lot of times when I had to say, God, if you've given me this opportunity and you put a vision in my mind that I'm going to accomplish it, this is just a challenge that I need to overcome. And it was the thing that kept me going, is that I knew I had good partners. I knew we had a good plan. I knew we had a good cause. We had good purpose. That was what kept me going. And there were days that I could sit there and just go, man, I don't know what to do. But then that goes back to the educated idiot part, is my whole life before then had prepared me for this. And you know what that prepared me to do? One thing. What am I going to do about it? Not what am I going to think about it. What am I going to do about it? So you know what I did? Picked up the phone. I started making some phone calls. You know what else I did? I started getting my body in better shape. I was at the time literally 30 pounds heavier than I am today. And I realized this is a perfect opportunity for me to finally get my body in shape, my mind in shape, and to start taking some action that maybe other people wouldn't. And I looked at that as an opportunity, not as an issue. We had to totally reinvent ourselves. We had to actually go on out and find out how you're supposed to do business in a virtual world, how we actually act and conduct business and conduct ourselves professionally in a virtual world. It totally changed everything. How we contacted people, how we presented materials, how we made sure we serviced people. And more importantly, how did we attract talented people to join an organization when it was brand new, when we didn't have any operations? We had an office and no one was coming to. We didn't even have the right equipment or tools. So the question was, we could just fold ourselves up, hold our tables up, put our thumb in our mouth and cry about it and say, man, look at how tough life was and how bad we had it. Or we could change something. And I'm proud to say, 5 years later, we're a multi-million-dollar company. We're growing. We're in Canada. We're in Puerto Rico. We've got almost all 50 states covered. We have thousands of people working in our organization, and we have tens of thousands of clients. And we couldn't be prouder of fighting through the challenges to make a difference in people's lives and reaping the benefits. There's a woman named Angela Duckworth. She has done many studies about what is the best predictor of what people will be successful. Here's what she found. The grit versus talent conversation. Grit always beats talent. Always. Why? Because when hard work is involved in a success formula, hard work always beats talent. There's a quote that says, when talent doesn't work hard, hard work beats talent. And it's seen in every scenario. So the question is, do you have grit? And mental toughness is going through the hard things, through the challenges as you go through that. Now, one of the foundations of what creates grit in your life is actually a focus on achieving a goal. It's making sure that you, in your mind, you literally say, nothing's going to stop me and nothing's going to prevent me from being successful. And let me give you a classic example, and everybody reveres these types of people. The U.S. Navy SEALs. I've been very, very privileged and honored to have several friends that have been on the teams and several people that have actually trained and taught at Buds. I'm very excited to say one thing. Those people are some of the most honorable people and some of my closest friends. And what's interesting about everybody, when I ask them the simple question, is why and how do people make it through Buds? What's the biggest indicator? And you know what their biggest indicator is? They don't quit. They have grit. They said, listen, when there's going to be times when you're going to be hungry, tired, you're cold, you're shaking uncontrollably. You literally can't control almost anything that's going on in your body. Your mind is racing, but the one thought is, I'm going to keep taking the next step, and the second thought is, I'm not going to let the person down next to me. It's not the biggest, the strongest, it's the ones that have the most grit. And what I find very interesting is when you look at the success rate of people that are super talented versus people that are trustworthy, the most of the focus and the main focus that they would want is the person who's trustworthy, that is good, has good talent and has a ton of ability, but doesn't have the most ability. Why? Because here's the values that I've found people that are in the teams. They value, and the three most common traits, they value these things: loyalty, integrity, and mental toughness. All three of those equal trust. So if you want to be a success and you want to be a person of intention and action and not be an educated idiot, boy, just look at the Navy SEALs. They may not be the most talented, but they sure as heck have the highest level of trust because they don't quit, they're loyal, they have integrity, and they're mentally tough. And don't get me wrong, they're skilled. They have knowledge. They have read the books. They've done the prep work. They never go into a battle without preparation, but they always go into a battle ready for action. So let's talk about how does that apply to business and business life. Boy, there's a whole bunch of things that I could use and so many people and examples. What I find is that when you look at people and you see the final product, you say, man, look they're so lucky. It's never that way. It's never that way. Any person who has had success, and even if they had been given a head start and they've been given some of the privileges because their parents paid the price for them to be there, they still have challenges. I know several people that have been given everything, but they've never overcome the challenges or never faced challenges, and they became educated idiots, and guess what? They lost everything. They lost everything. So let me give you some examples of true success of people that have been entrepreneurs in the business world. Everybody here is Thomas Edison, and Thomas Edison is all over the place. Anytime you turn on a light bulb, you literally start thinking about Thomas Edison created that. But did you know that Thomas Edison has failed 2,774 times before he finally got the light bulb right? Could you imagine if he quit at 2773? We'd never have the light bulb. Or at least somebody else then would have actually taken that knowledge and done it. But he persevered. How about Walt Disney? Walt Disney was rejected 300 times by 300 different banks and lending institutions to get the funding to start his enterprise of Disney. How about J.K. Rowling? She faced a number of rejections for the book Harry Potter, which ended up being arguably one of the most successful book series in the world. And how about Sylvester Stallone? You know, we know him now as an icon in the movie industry, but when he was getting started, they loved his movie. They didn't love him. People wanted to buy his movie, but they didn't want him in it. And he was absolutely focused on becoming a success in acting and demonstrating his creative artistry. And even to the point when he rejected the money for the film and he had to sell his most prized possession and prized relationship, which is his dog, so that he could eat to fight another day to have that movie be a reality in his life. Ultimately bought back his dog and got everything back, but that's mental toughness and grit, having a plan and being focused. Was not an educated idiot. Which brings me to the next point. Knowledge is power. Is it? I will tell you this. Yes, it's the start. It's the wick. But it doesn't start on fire. That wick doesn't get caught on fire to get that explosion to happen unless you have some form of motivation and burning desire to achieve something. See, motivation is equally as important as knowledge. Now, to be clear, if you are highly motivated and you're not knowledgeable, you don't want to have a motivated idiot. There's a lot of bad things that can happen. So you truly do want to have a very educated, motivated person, and now you have what we call the magic for success. But one of the most important things about looking at life is that when you have the knowledge and you don't put it into action, it's useless. See, being in the financial services industry, I've been in the industry for almost 30 years. I know many people that say, I want to become financially literate. So they read all the books. They go to all the seminars. They even talk to professionals. They pay the money to talk to professionals. They even get a financial coach. The financial coach says, you need to do this. And they say, I'm not ready. And they don't do anything. I can tell you there are more people that are educated idiots in their finances because they don't do what's required to be successful, which means get started. Start investing, even if it's a small amount. Start paying off the debt, even if it's a small amount. Stop spending unnecessarily, even if it's on small things. All of that leads to success. It's the more I start thinking about it, the more emotional I get becomes, I say, do something. And just do a little bit, and a little bit turns into a lot. I say baby steps turn to big steps, and big steps change people's lives. That's a critical thing. The other is the danger of knowledge is awareness and familiarity without action. And guess what that means? You become what they call lukewarm. And there's several things that says, when I have lukewarm things in my mouth, I spit it out. I can tell you, you'd never want to be in a situation, which I see many people do. You know what? I already know that. I've heard that already. I know that. Well, if you do, then what the hell did you do about it? Nothing. That is the definition of an educated idiot. And I want to make sure I don't overemphasize this, but I sure as heck don't want to underemphasize this, is that if you become familiar enough with something and accept it and do nothing about it, then that becomes part of your life. And it's usually the bad habits that stick around. It's usually the things that you're not content with or you're not happy with. And all of a sudden that becomes your life. And then you wake up when you're 40, 50, 60 years old and say, I wish I could have done it differently because I knew better. Please don't be an educated idiot. And if you can hear my passion, it's the one cry of my life is that people of action can change their lives more than people of knowledge. Just to be clear. So having said that, one of the great traits of people that are very successful are called lifelong learners. Now, learning isn't just about knowledge and familiarity and awareness. It's also about experience and doing something about the experience. You know, they say the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, see, that's actually part of lifelong learning, is from the experiences that you have, you learned what to do, what not to do, and you do more of the things that you're supposed to do. So there's tons and tons of examples about this, data all over the place. One of the biggest data points is that when you look at the employees, the current employees of the workforce today, they say 50% of the workforce needs to be reskilled and retooled on a different area of their life, whether it be on technology, whether it be on operations, whether it be in communications, whether it be soft skills, whether it be hard skills in terms of physical labor and things of that sort. 50% of people that are in the workforce need to have a skill upgrade or a relearning and maybe even a learning of a new skill. It's really important. And some more data to consider is that in Forbes, in the Forbes report, it said the reading habits of CEOs is extraordinary because there is a philosophy when you become a leader, and as I've become a leader of my family, leader of business, a leader of enterprises and charities, I have come to adopt this one slogan, and it was actually by a very famous general. And the famous general is, I just know it's a famous general, but I've heard it in almost every Army scenario. As the general says, what I don't know might kill us all. And so as you become a leader, it's important to have knowledge. And knowledge does become power when you're ready to make a decision and put it into action. So a normal CEO reads 60 books a year versus the average person reads 4. Think about that. That's a mindful of knowledge every single year that's being added to people that are ready to make decisions and put it into action. And here's some things that's really interesting. You think about Warren Buffett. He spends 80% of his time reading and thinking about things. But what's interesting is, what about the other 20%? He takes what he learned and what he's been thinking about and puts it into action. He makes decisions to buy companies and when to buy companies, and he puts it into action. He doesn't just think about it and say, that's a nice idea. He puts it into action. I think about Bill Gates. Bill Gates actually has what he calls think weeks, and I love the thought process of it. It's literally, he takes a week in a year, and it's actually several times now he does this, where all he does is bring books, a pad of paper, and he thinks and puts down all those ideas. But as soon as he gets done with that think week, he goes right into action. It's what he's done with Microsoft for years. It's what he's done with the Gates Foundation. And it's thinking about, how do I solve hard problems, which you can see in his foundation, which is about healthcare and energy crises around the world, food crisis around the world. These are big problems that he's focused on getting ideas and putting them to action, to test them over and over and over again. Well, what about you? What about me? Again, action takes priority, and the best thing to do is, once you learn something, put it into action. I'm going to make sure that you hear this and hear it very clearly. An imperfect plan aggressively put into execution today is always better than a perfect plan executed tomorrow. Let me say that again. An imperfect plan aggressively executed today always beats a perfect plan done tomorrow. What does that mean? It means take steps. And I heard this. I've heard this person speak, and it was fascinating. He was close to being a billionaire, and I don't even remember his name, but what stood out to me is what he said about his success. They said, what was the one thing that made to your success and why you've gotten your wealth? And he said, it's because I made decisions fast and I put it into action. I was faster than everybody else. And the interviewer said, well, what do you mean? And this is what caught my attention. He said, even if I didn't know what to do, I did something and I learned, because I would make 3 or 4 mistakes before they even got started. And I'm already 3 or 4 generations down of correcting that mistake to get the thing done. So while I'm making the mistakes that they're about to make, I've already done them, I've already learned from them, and I'm already now on to the success. Boy, tell me that's not a classic example of what I call an imperfect plan aggressively executed today always beats a perfect plan tomorrow. So my question to you in this segment is knowledge power? It sure is when it's put into action. So as we start coming to an end, I want to make sure that you understand that being motivated and not educated is not good, and being educated and not motivated to execute is bad too. So both of them, one by itself and only isolated by itself and not acted upon combining, is a problem. So my question to you is that, are you ready to at least take the step into action, even if it's imperfect? And that means people may look at you and go, oh, you're dumb. Hey, you know what? I'm okay. Or why would you do that? And they question all your actions. Just go do it. Just do it. And the one thing I love about the Nike campaign of Just Do It, it wasn't about being the most successful. It was about doing it. Doing the running when it was cold and rainy. Doing the running when it was early in the morning. Fighting for the time to go do it, which is, it was the running and the physical activity. Well, that's the same thing we're talking about in terms of mental toughness. When you combine knowledge and mental toughness together, it changes everything. See, an educated idiot, again, is someone that actually becomes a learner and not a doer. And those two things need to be combined. So let me talk about some takeaways. The first one is have a growth mindset. And a growth mindset is actually critical because when you get faced with a challenge, you need to know that you can either cower away or you can grow. Now, let me give you an example of what that means. Early in my career, working in the financial services business as we were trying to grow our business, I was recruiting talented people to get into our training to grow their organization, to grow my organization. And I had an unbelievable candidate, person from Goldman Sachs, who's very well educated, very experienced, senior person, knew how to run a team and lead a team. And I was still new and young in the business. So as he comes in, we do the interview. And when it was finished, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Bill, I really like you. You're a good guy." And he was a little bit my senior in age. He said, I can't be on your team. And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I'm a better leader than you. I'm more experienced than you. I know more than you." And there was two things that went through my mind. The first one was, screw you, man. And because I'm from the South Side, sometimes we like to do a little bit more fighting than we like to do talking. I wanted to punch this guy. And then there was the second part is, well, is he right? Is he a better leader? And you know what? The answer was, yeah, he was. And I could do two things. I could cry about it or I could do something about it. And what I immediately did is I went to go learn some things that put it into action. And the first thing that I did is I read the book 21 Irrefutable Laws of John with John Maxwell. I read it from cover to cover. And then I said, how do I make this a routine in my life? So what I did is I took each chapter, there's 21 laws. I took each one of those laws and I focused on it for that week. Whether it would be lifting my lid or it was the E.F. Hutton, whatever it was, that law that week became my number one focus. And it changed my behavior. I read a book called Think and Grow Rich. Another book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I can tell you today, I didn't read that book or those books to learn. I read those books to master, to change my life. I didn't want to be an educated idiot to say, yeah, I know that stuff, but I don't become a better leader. I don't become a better father. I don't become a better husband. I don't become a better friend. I don't become more skilled in my given occupation. I wanted to become a master of the things that were important to me, and that was one of them. So let me give you a couple books to consider. And there's a whole bunch of books, but let me give you a couple to consider. The first one I gave you already was the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. How about How to Win Friends by Dale Carnegie? Think and Grow Rich by Hill. And I will tell you, those two books I've probably read at least 25 times. Think and Grow Rich and How to Win Friends and Influence People. I've also read 21 Irrefutable Laws a number of times. I couldn't even count it. But here's some new ones that came out. I shouldn't say new, but they're good books to read. High Performance Habits by Brendan Burchard. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And there's a more recent book by Seth Godin called This is Strategy. Really good book. How do you think about strategic thinking and putting strategy into action? Really good book. But these are books that you might want to take and consider to read, not just to learn, but to literally change your life. Now, when you think about changing your life, let's talk about daily routine, because they say success doesn't happen overnight. It happens in your daily routine. Success happens in your daily routine. I'm going to say it again. Success happens in your daily routine. So here's some things that not only have worked for me, but as I've studied very successful people, I've noticed that these are the commonalities, and I have implemented them in my life, and I've done them for a number of years. The first thing is when you wake up, start with doing some physical activity and physical fitness. What you'll find with doing physical activity and physical fitness is it not only wakes up your body, it gets your blood flowing, gets you breathing much deeper and having more oxygen in your body. That's on the science side. Here's on the reality side. Your heart rate goes up, you become stronger, you become more mentally clear, and what's interesting, when you feel better, you do better. And it's amazing. When I exercise, I feel better. Here's the second thing, is they have a daily goal. For me, I set 3 daily goals, 3 things that are most important that I need to get done that day. And they measure it. And this is how I measure it. At the end of the day, I have 3 days. I call it win the day. And I have 3 things that I need to get accomplished every day. Even today, as we're doing this, I already accomplished 2 of the 3 things that I need to get done today. And why do I do those things? It keeps me on target. It keeps me active. It keeps me focused. But then at the end of the day, I ask a very simple question. Did I accomplish those 3 things? And it's a yes or no. It's not a no, but there's no buts. It's yes or no. And then if it's a no, the next question you have to ask yourself is, what do I need to do differently tomorrow to make sure I get all 3 things done? There's no excuses. It's yes or no. And then the very last thing, this is probably the most important, and I've been practicing this for a number of years, is make a list of the things that you're grateful for at the end of the day. If you're a spiritual person, it might be in your prayers. If you're not a spiritual person, you might want to put it down in what we call your gratitude journal. Whatever it is, it's hard to be fearful when you have gratitude. Because when you're grateful for things, you don't take things for granted. And you don't become afraid of anything because everything is a gift. It's a powerful, powerful thing. So let me give you a couple closing thoughts. The first thing I want you to ask yourself at the end of this podcast, in my life, am I just learning or am I changing my behavior? Let me say that again. The question you should ask yourself is, am I just learning or am I changing my behavior? I would hate to see that you read all those books that I recommended and you don't change your behavior. You keep doing the same thing. The second thing is I want you to ask the question, what am I changing in my life and how am I changing things in my life? And this is why. When you change, everything around you changes. And when you get better, everything around you gets better. So again, when you say, what am I changing? What are you going to measure with that changes? So I'll give you an example. I wanted to be able to talk nicer to my wife. There's a lot of times instead of talking, I was barking at her. And I wanted to be able to be more, relaxed, and I wanted, more importantly, to be nicer to my wife. So you know what I did? Is I wanted to know, at the end of the day, when I spoke to my wife, did I ask her a question or did I make it a statement? And what was interesting is when I asked my wife more questions, I started to become more interested in what her opinion was, more interested in the things that were interesting to her. And you know what was interesting? I became more interesting. She was more interested in my life. And all of a sudden now we had conversations instead of what we call barking matches. It's a simple thing. I change, everything around me changes. When I got better at communicating, everything around me got better, and all of a sudden we got better. Those are just simple things. Again, saying I want to have a better relationship is one thing, but doing something about it is another. Don't be an educated idiot, especially on your marriage, especially with your kids. And the last thing, mental toughness plus knowledge equals unstoppable success. Let's say that again. Mental toughness plus knowledge equals unstoppable success. So I'd like you to consider what the Navy SEALs calls the most important thing for people to become part of the teams. Loyalty, integrity, mental toughness. Those 3 things equal trust. I hope this makes a difference in your life.